yes, the standard I was trying to reach was using information from illustrations to demonstrate an understanding of its characters, setting, and plot. My learning map had several parts. This was just like the group part of it, the whole class instruction. And, you know, I was basically trying to help her use like context clues in the text to understand what the story was about. I think maybe next time I would have, just in my own reflection, I would have used another story as an example. So I would have started with the one that I used, How to Fill Your Bucket, and then would also have pulled up another story that maybe the students have already read before, and so that they already know
So maybe, yeah,
what the characters are and things like that.
use two, one, so you can kind of guide the lesson where you can are more doing more of like a think out loud, like, oh, this is how I look for a plot. This is how I look for the characters, using them
Right,
as an example. Then with another book, now, all right, it's the kids' turn. We're gonna be
right,
reading this out loud, or
right,
before we do the reading, we're gonna use the context clues, use the pictures,
right.
and this time I want you to do it.
Right, right. And I think in the book that I used, there wasn't a like a definitive setting. It wasn't like we're in the woods or in a cottage or wherever. It was kind of very vague, and so I think that made that part of it difficult. In rewatching the video, you know, I can see that she did learn how to use the photos in, you know, on the cover to help determine what the book was about. But then in asking her about it, I could tell she didn't understand why it was important to use the illustrations to understand a story and to help us with reading comprehension and to support reading comprehension. And so I think in future lessons, I will like start with, you know, this is what reading comprehension is, and this is why we want to use illustrations.
Yeah, so this is why we're doing it, so that we can comprehend what's going on in the book.
Right. Because I was trying to prompt her with it, and she was like, sure.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah, right. And I was like, but do you understand why we use these images? And she kind of didn't. And so
I think that was the only place where I saw that, yeah, you did need a prompter. But
right,
besides that, when you were talking about the other vocabulary words,
right,
she knew them. Now, when I'm thinking as a bigger classroom, if you would be doing this lesson with more than just one student, I would think that it would help doing a beforehand, going over the vocabulary list, maybe using visuals.
right,
This is their second graders. Some of them do need visuals. You did great with auditory. You were using the words in context. You were like, okay, now how am I applying it to the book? But maybe for the other students, maybe also the English language learners, maybe have a vocab, like an actual poster with the vocab words and maybe like a little image next to it.
right,
Or
right,
maybe help the other ones that don't just get it right off the bat like she
right,
did.
right, right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think if I were in a classroom, I would have had those props, you know, those props available. But you know, doing it in your home, it's a little different. But
A
that,
little different,
yeah,
yeah.
but that's definitely using images would have been very helpful as well. So yeah, so I think she understood the standard and she knew what the point of it was, but then she couldn't understand, she couldn't, you know, tell me why we use the images and why
Yeah.
it's important that we do that. And then the second question is formulate how effective your instructional design was based on your planning, teaching as evidenced by data collected on student, process, and products of learning.
Can you repeat that one more time? You got a little bit cut off.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it just says formulate how effective your instructional design was. And so I think we kind of covered that, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think overall it was effective for her. There was still, like I said, at the end where we both noticed that she
Right.
was listening to us and she's like, yeah, it's important, but
Right.
to understand why we were doing it.
Right.
And so when we look at the bigger picture, she's a girl that she's above her grade level, it
Right.
seems.
Yeah.
That's all I'm thinking of, just like the bigger picture. Okay, there's the other kids. So how are we going to make the lesson fit other kids' needs?
Yes. Yeah. And I think starting with the story that everybody has read would help.
Yeah, that would help. If
Yeah.
it's a story, maybe not one that you've done a lesson with, just one that you've just done a read aloud with.
Right.
Just so that, it's one that they enjoy and one that they for sure know who
Yes.
the characters are, where the plot is, so they can put it to example.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Um, and then so I wrote some notes here. Um, yeah, how to use the illustrations in a book to make predictions. Yeah, and then how we use those predictions to understand and support reading comprehension. I think I also would have discussed the learning goal a little bit more, and checked for understanding throughout the lesson. I'm not sure I stated this is our learning goal. This is what we're doing right here, and that is so important. So students
Yeah.
know
Yeah, so
exactly
students
what
know why it is
expectation.
that they're doing this. Like, why am I sitting here? Why are we reading this?
Right.
So I
Yeah.
think you could also, at the end, bring it back to that. Like, okay,
Right.
um,
Right.
so what is it that we learned? We learned how to find the plot by using the pictures, by using the cover,
Right.
reiterating, I think that's the right word,
Yeah.
reiterating everything at the end to have to close it.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I think I also would have defined plot, character, and setting before as well. So I said,
Yeah.
hey, this is our learning goal. And then let's talk about the definitions of a plot, a setting, and characters. And I didn't do that. And I'll do that next time.
Because you did do it throughout the lesson. So like, oh, that's a reminder. What's the setting? So you
Right.
did do that, keeping in mind that she is smart. She is above her grade level and she knows it. But again, when we think about the other kids, it
Right.
would be
Right.
helpful to do it beforehand.
Right. Yeah.
So,
And like you said,
or
and having like those visual aids,
Mhm.
with a picture of a setting, and have the word setting next to it and a plot, and the characters of a book that they already know. I'll definitely do that next time.
I think one thing that was really great was your timing of that lesson.
Oh,
Even if you would have added the other part,
right.
it's still, I think you could have done that in a feasible amount of time. This was less than 10 minutes, I think
Right.
around 9.
Yeah.
So even if you had done now, all right, let's now this time do it with another book, and this time we're going to go through the whole thing, read it, your lesson would have been roundabout around 20 minutes.
Right. Right.
For their age group,
Yeah.
it's good.
Right.
I think where the video ended, if you would have done like, okay, let's take a little minute break, let's stand, stretch, wiggle, because they are second graders.
Right.
Good. All right, now let's jump into this book. Overall, that would have taken you between
Yeah.
22 minutes. So I
Right.
think your timing is good. You're doing good on timing.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then let's see. Yeah, so that's all I have for my notes. And then how would you modify, extend, incorporate new levels of presentation, expression, and engagement?
So we
Using
talked about
story.
up on the adding different means of representation where we
Right,
present the information in different ways, adding some more visuals.
right.
Um,
Using another story as an example when
yeah.
they already know.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe even also something different. You could always find a little short story that's like a
yeah.
short film, like one of those 3, 4 short
Right,
films.
right.
Like, okay, we're just based off of like the first 10 seconds of the clip.
Yeah,
What do you think is going to happen? And
right,
where does it look like the setting is?
right. Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, I think,
Overall, honestly, I think it was really great. That girl seemed like and there's like good and bad in that, right? When you have
right,
such a good student, like
right,
wow, she knows her stuff. This is just gonna make it easy for me. But
right,
then, okay, what do you do when you have the rest of the class that's not the same level as her?
right,
You have to be able to like, all right, we need to find a middle ground.
right,
You can zoom through it, but then the rest of them are not behind,
right.
but then she's just trying to like,
I
go,
know,
go,
right.
go.
Right.
Hold on, they
Yeah,
just need to catch up.
right. I
So,
definitely would have been asking other students, those questions
yeah,
as well, and checking for understanding throughout the
and
class.
obviously that's not something that's on us. That's just because of the circumstances that we're in, where
Right,
we can't. It's harder to get more access to more students.
right,
You know,
right,
for example, for mine was longer than I would have wanted it. I know that's one of the things I need to practice on the timing, and I think it was because obviously it was just one student, but this student was the opposite of your student. She was struggling. She was trying so hard. She was
yeah,
trying so hard, but because she knew that all the attention was on her. I didn't have
Mhm.
any other students. You know, when we were in class, you'd be like,
Right.
okay, like with her, you can be like, thank you. What was her name?
Sophia.
Thank you, Sophia. Let's give her a chance to try to
Right.
answer. For
Right.
me, it would be the opposite. I didn't have any other students to say,
Right.
okay, Jasmine, do you want to see if we have a classmate that can help you out? And
Right.
boom, like,
Right.
all right, get an answer. No, it was dragging.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's finding that balance and knowing that once we have more kids to work with, a bigger classroom, like it'll be a little better.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But we learn from this. It's good experience,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think overall you did a really good job
Thanks. I appreciate it.
for the time frame that it was,
Yeah.
for um the standard and hitting that standard.
Right.
It was, you did good.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks. I really appreciate your help
Of
today.
course, no problem. Of
Thank
course.
you.